And I'm going to continue taking some questions here. Definitely appreciate everybody dropping your questions in my DMs, and you can also drop them here live on the stream. We do stream these live on YouTube, Facebook, Kick, Twitch, X, and all the different platforms. But thank you for shooting me your questions. And let's go ahead and get into the first question here from Alex, which is there a point where bootstrapping actually becomes dumb and you should take money, or do people just quit too early? I think that bootstrapping is great for as long as you have to do, and if you get to the point where you need an investor and want an investor, then you should have some sales to show first. So I think that's really the key to what we're talking about here, is that you're bootstrapped to get the business up and running and start getting sales, and then at that point you could choose to have an investor if you want. But most people don't even need an investor at that point if you get some sales going. So I would say that would be the answer to that question. All right, question here from Megan. Do you think starting a business younger is actually easier, or is that just something successful people say after the fact? I think it's easier in the long term to win if you started your business young. I wouldn't say that it's a disadvantage to start it later. It's never a bad time. But at the end of the day, you're young in the beginning, but everybody's going to make mistakes in the beginning of their business. And so at the end of the day, if you're young, you can get those mistakes out the way. Myself started my first company when I was 15, so I still live with my parents. So I was able to be a lot more risky than a lot of people that are older, because you have bills to pay and you got a mortgage to pay or rent or whatever it is. So that allowed me to get through a lot of the trials and tribulations in the first years that most businesses struggle, while I had a little bit more freedom as a kid. So in that term, in those terms, if you are a kid right now, I'll definitely start your business, not just on the principle of being an entrepreneur and wanting to do that, but also on the principle of, there's no time like now. And the younger you are, the quicker you can get through getting beat up by the market in the industry, and get those things out of the way, so that you can be a more successful, well-rounded entrepreneur as you get older. All right, we got a question here from Chris T. How do you know when it's time to stop tweaking your offer and just let it ride? So the marketplace will tell you whether you need to tweak your offer, or continue doing what you're doing. It's going to give you the data to do that, but that's ultimately going to be your choice. But if you know that it's not selling how it is, then you should definitely tweak it and present it to more people and see what it does. And then at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, no matter how you change it or tweak it, it's important to be able to pivot to something else, some other product or service, or business. Uh, Sometimes things just don't work, and the marketplace will tell you that. Again, you got to get out in front of enough people for the marketplace to tell you that. But it's definitely something that the market will tell you if people are responding to your product or service, or if they're not. All right, we have another question here from Jasmine, which is it normal to feel guilty working on your business when you should be relaxing or hanging with friends? No, I would just make sure you get everything you can done. Everybody needs some time to relax with, family and friends. If you are a very dedicated business person, typically the business is going to come with you no matter where you go or what you're doing, because especially nowadays with the cell phones and you're checking your email, usually typically you can get a lot done even when you're visiting with friends and family. But there's also time where you can kind of tune out a little bit. At the end of the day, it's just about getting it done. So if you're the type of person that can get things done and still take some, time off and stuff, then go ahead. And some people like to just live their business 24/7 and kind of prioritize that. So it depends on how you want to do it. But I wouldn't feel guilty for hanging out with your friends and family instead of working on your business. Maybe if you know you're doing that too much and procrastinating on doing something for your business, but there's always time for friends and family, even for successful business people, or even struggling business people who don't have as much time as the more successful business people, or people with a 9-to-5 job. Okay, question here from Ethan. At what point does hustle turn into just bad decision making? Like, how do you tell the difference? It's a good question. What's the difference between just hustling and bad decision making? I would say, I guess, hustling is, the actual work ethic of it, and bad decision making is, something that happens with entrepreneurs. So I wouldn't be too scared of that. Bad decisions are going to happen, things are going to fail, and it's mostly going to be your fault, right? As the business owner, it's typically our fault if things fail, and we're ultimately responsible for everything. So the hustle is what can, get you going, and the bad decisions are going to come. And so, that's why you have to be ready to overcome all of that to be able to keep going as a entrepreneur or business owner, self-employed person, to keep going. All right, how much of success is skill versus just not quitting when everyone else would? Mostly not quitting when everyone else would. Also, not procrastinating, making sure you're organized, making sure you're doing things correctly. We talk about using AI to do that a lot. So, of course, you need to be on point. You might not have the best skills, but working hard means that you're working hard in every aspect, even being organized, especially if those are things that you typically aren't doing or you're procrastinating. So, you know, don't neglect those things, but the bad decisions, are going to come. All right. Question from Ryan here. Let's see. What's something you thought was super important early on that literally doesn't matter at all now? I think something important I think something that I thought was important that doesn't really matter at all is just how people kind of view you and your company. As long as the sales are coming in and the customers are happy, don't worry about what other people are thinking. I've made some big mistakes just trying to prove myself to other people in the industry, friends, family, things like that, where it wasn't necessary. And I could have made a better business decision if I was just focusing on my business and my customers and not my ego. So maybe I would say that that is, kind of the biggest thing there is ego, for myself. I'm not even talking about other entrepreneurs, just talking about myself, the ego of trying to prove something that you don't need to prove when you need to be working on your business and making sales. And that will prove everything you need to prove for everybody. All right. Question here from Olivia. How do you deal with people who keep asking, how's the business going when it's clearly not popping yet? Great question. How do you answer people who ask you how the business is going, even if it's not popping yet? I would just tell them that you're working hard on it and things are coming together. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to that, right? But at the end of the day, friends and family, they may not understand, but mostly they're supportive usually. Some people might be negative, and that's fine. Some people are negative. Some people kind of try to put you down or kill your dreams. But at the end of the day, as long as you know what you're doing, you know that this is what you want to do, and you're ready to work as much as it takes to get it done, don't worry about that stuff. That's all noise. Focus on you. Focus on your business. Focus on your sales. That will prove everyone wrong if they are negative. Okay. Do you think people underestimate how boring building a real business actually is? So let's see here. Do you think people underestimate how boring building a real business actually is? I think probably. I think especially if you're going to be doing it, correctly with the paperwork and all that stuff and keeping it organized and making sure that your accounting is done, all that kind of stuff is a lot of stuff that business owners, entrepreneurs typically don't like to do. A lot of us are more visionary and much more get out there and make things happen, or even salespeople, especially for the self-employed people like realtors or loan officers and things like that. So, it gets boring in that sense of trying to keep all that stuff together, but that comes with the vision and being an entrepreneur and the great part about it. And so, you do have to stay organized, and that's probably the not fun part about it. But the fun part about it is creating new ideas, products, services, taking them to the marketplace and having the market purchase it. So, you know, that's the exciting part. And then the boring part is probably the monotonous, checking the boxes, doing the paperwork, doing all those things. Now, there's so many programs now, and there's now AI is taking over so much that it's getting easier and easier to do those things that are not so fun. And so take advantage of that. And of course, it's also getting easier to do the things that are fun and get out there and create design, and create services and products. So it's just an amazing time to be an entrepreneur, to found a business. And I hope that everyone tries it. Okay. Question from Marcus. Do you think people underestimate? Oh, I'm sorry. That was the last question. Let me go to the next question here. Question from Laura. How do you stay patient? Excuse me, Lauren's. Question from Lauren. How do you stay patient when results are slow but effort is high? Just keep going. At the end of the day, sales will, you know, pick up or results will pick up, whatever it is, as long as you keep going. Especially in today's landscape of social media, as long as you're always posting and all that kind of stuff, you can always keep going and keep growing. The most important thing is to put in the effort. And if you know you're putting in the effort, I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right. Here's a great question from Tony. When do you know it's time to raise prices versus just get better at selling? I think you know when to raise the price when you've sold out your inventory. So if you have a service, for example, and you can only provide that to 10 or 20 people, sell out those 10 or 20 slots first. Don't start guessing and thinking. I see a lot of people on the internet and there's like webinars and stuff saying how to get your product up to a much, lower, or excuse me, a much higher price. So I see a lot of social media content out there of people saying raise your prices, don't deal with the bottom customers, deal with the top. That's easy to say, but it's a lot harder to do. So what I would do first is work hard to fill the inventory that you have at the price that you're currently selling it if the market is responding to it at that price. Fill all of that inventory. Say you can only work with 20 people in a month for your service, then fill out all 20. Say you can only sell X amount of product per month and then sell all that product and then start raising the prices. So I do think it's a little troubling to, kind of jump to the conclusion of raising the price because you think that that's going to change the type of customer base you're going to get. That is a strategy. And of course, it may not be a wrong strategy, but in my opinion, my strategy would be to sell what you have first at the price that it's working at. And then once that's all sold, then you can immediately raise the price and you know that you're doing the right thing and you're not doing something just kind of a guess of, hey, if I raise my prices, I'll get better customers because they'll have more money or my service or product will seem more valuable. Maybe, but at the end of the day, you should sell what you have and then you raise the prices. That's how it works. Sell what you have right now, your inventory, or if it's a service, however much you can provide that service, sell it completely out. And then you say, okay, I need to raise my prices because I'm completely booked out. And that way you're not kind of just chasing a dream of hoping to raise your prices with no justification for it. All right. Question here from Natalie is it better to start something you're good at or something you're interested in learning? That's just a personal preference. I would say it's a personal preference of starting something you're good at versus something you're interested in. But I do talk about following your efforts. I do talk about making sure that whatever you're good at typically is something that you're putting your effort behind. And if you're good at something, then you will become more passionate about it and interested in it. And so I would say that just start the business that you know that you can do and you can make successful, and then maybe you get into the thing that you're maybe more interested in, a passion project. And again, that's just my opinion. All right, I got a question from Jordan here. How do you mentally reset after a bad week in business without spiraling? Honestly, I would say that I never reset after a bad week of business. I think it's just a constant thing. I don't even think of business in terms of weeks, right? It's 7 days a week. And so I just keep going always. You always keep going. And I don't really have a reset. Maybe other people do, and maybe that's a good thing. Just personally, I don't have any kind of reset like that. And I also don't look at the business in terms of weeks necessarily. I just look at it in terms of, you know, a constant thing and getting things done. So Sunday is no different than Monday to me, typically, as far as business goes. And so it's just kind of constant thing. I would say that it's just more so of just keeping yourself going during those times. But I don't really look at the week in terms of, okay, it's Monday again. I need to do something to reset because last week was bad. I would say that that would just happen naturally whenever it happens. But again, that's just with me. All right. We have a question here from Sam. What's the difference between being disciplined and just being obsessed? What's the difference between being disciplined and just being obsessed? That's a good question. I can't tell you that. I really don't have the answer to that question there, Sam. I being disciplined is doing what you're supposed to do. Being obsessed, I guess, is a great thing to have when it comes to trying to accomplish a goal. Being obsessed with it, but you have to be disciplined as well. So I guess I would say that the difference between being disciplined and just being obsessed is the work, right? Discipline means that you're actually doing the work. Being obsessed means that you're obsessed with the idea. And being obsessed with doing the work is great, but that is also essentially discipline. So I think if it's about doing the work that needs to be done, then they're one and the same. But if it's just obsession and it doesn't come with the discipline to make it happen, then that's not good, and that's not going to get you anywhere. Okay. Question from Kayla. Do you think social media makes entrepreneurship look easier or harder than it really is? I do think social media makes entrepreneurship look easier than it is. And I think a lot of people have a lot of hard times on the back end. I do know that most entrepreneurs that are successful will tell you that it's not easy. And so I would beware of anybody telling you that it is easy. As far as I'll tell you it's easy to get started now. That's what founding without funding is about. But I would never tell you it's easy to run a business or to create a successful business. So anybody that tells you that, I wouldn't necessarily believe it. I think every successful business person will tell you that it's going to be very difficult. Somebody telling you on social media that it's easy, maybe they're lucky, or maybe it was easy for them. But for, I would say, 99% of business owners and entrepreneurs would tell you it is not easy. But they would probably also tell you that it's worth it in the end. Okay. How long should someone realistically give a business idea before deciding it's not working? That's a personal decision of how long you should work on one idea, product, or service before you start working on another or start changing things. And that's going to be whether you're making sales or not, and also the feedback that you're getting from the people that you're making sales to and the people that you're not making sales to. You want to make sure to call everybody, touch base with them, ask questions. Even if they're people who didn't buy, ask them questions on why they didn't buy. Get that data, that information, and that will help you make the decision of whether you need to change your offering or work on a different offering altogether. Okay, question here from Isabella. What's one thing you do now that would have saved you a ton of stress early on? What's one thing that I do now that would have saved me a lot of stress early on? Just being more, I guess, disciplined and being more open to new things and using new technology. I think that I was a little bit more stuck in my ways when I was younger, and I was not quite, taking advantage of learning all of the things myself. I would typically rely on some other people at the company to handle certain things that I could definitely have learned myself and that nowadays I do know. And so I don't go into a business or have any businesses where I'm not trying to know every aspect of the business. And I think just out of ego, when I was first getting started, it was like, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm the CEO and I do this, this, and this. And yes, I was busy 24/7, but I should have learned the other side more. And as I got older, I learned that I need to know all aspects of my business. It's not, hey, that's not my job. I don't need to know how to do it. You should be learning every aspect of the business and learning how everyone is doing their job, because not only is that going to help you in all ways with your business, especially with being a leader within your business, but it's going to help your sales as well. All right. Let's see here. What's one thing? Oh, whoops, that was the last question. Sorry about that. Okay. Dylan's asking, how do you deal with comparisons when you see the other founders winning online? Don't compare yourself to anyone. Don't compare your business to anyone. There's people like, Jeff Bezos, where people would compare Amazon to all kinds of stuff and, talk about how much money they're losing and all that kind of stuff, and look at it now. And a lot of people will tell you the same thing. So, you know, don't worry about that. Don't worry about comparisons. No entrepreneur, no business can compare itself to the other. Some will fail, some will succeed, some will take a long time to succeed, but succeed massively, like Amazon or other companies like that. And some things just take more time than others. Some people take more time than others. Certain product or services take more time than others. Sometimes you might be too ahead with your product or service, but a little bit after it catches up and goes bigger than ever. So don't compare yourself to anyone. Don't compare your business to anyone. Compare yourself to yourself and your business to the marketplace, and let your sales and your business growth do the talking. All right, I'll go ahead and take two more questions here. So, question from Trevor: is it better to build something small that makes money or chase something big that might never work? I think that's uh, with the with the founding without funding formula, it's definitely better to build something small that makes money rather than chasing something big. But that depends on what you're trying to do exactly and what kind of business you have. Some businesses are just more of, we're trying to build something big and it's a long term plan. But I would say for most businesses, products or services, the entrepreneurs, at the end of the day, you should be building something that works, get some income coming in, and not worry about, waiting on things, and not worry about some big, idea that is going to take years to come to fruition. I would get something out there, get the marketplace to respond to it by making some sales, and then I would try to optimize that in every way and grow your profit margins, and then you can pour fuel on the fire and scale that up. So, I would focus more on getting something small going than getting something, some very large idea. And you might have some large ideas in the long run, but you can figure out some ways to monetize some of the products or services that have to do with that in the meantime. And that's what a lot of companies have had to do. Say, we have our eye on the big picture, but for now we need to sell this, or that. And then eventually it's going to be free, or eventually we're going to have the real product or service that kind of over lays on top of all of this. So, in my opinion, I would focus on creating a smaller business that actually makes sales than a larger idea that may or may not come to fruition in a couple of years. That's my opinion. Okay, last question here from Sophie. What's one mindset shift that instantly made business feel less overwhelming for you? I would say recently, using AI is the thing that takes the most stress away from running a business. It really does. Whether you're just using GPT for ideas and responses, business plans, instructions, or whether you're using things to make graphics or videos or ads, there's just so much possibility now that you can get done with AI. And that's something that helps with my stress nowadays, to make sure that I'm using it correctly and I'm using it at all times. And even I forget to use it for some things. And I talk about it a lot, but even I forget to use it when there's something that can be done with AI. Sometimes you just start doing it manually. Well, hold on, I could get this done, with AI in just a few minutes. So keep that in mind. And that's something I would say is that definitely recently, that's what's made it easier to start a business. Maybe not necessarily, go through the trials and tribulations of running an entire business, but it definitely helps you with starting it. And it definitely helps you keep on target and just make sure that you run everything through AI and get its opinion, right? It's definitely not, it tells you right there in the disclaimer, it's not always right. And it's not always right, but use it to give you that initial structure of your ideas or your formats or your emails or whatever it is that you're doing. Run it through there and then choose for yourself. But get that busy work out of the way, get it all done and structured, and then you can edit it from there to exactly what you want. So definitely take advantage of AI in this day and age. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Definitely appreciate it. We will see you next time on the Founding Without Funding podcast.